The courthouse stood tall against the evening sky as Judge Elaine Washington gathered her papers. The clock on the wall showed 6:30 p.m. Another long day was finally ending. She rubbed her tired eyes and smiled at the thought of going home to her family. 15 years as a lawyer and now 5 years as a judge had taught her that justice was a marathon, not a sprint. As a little girl, Elaine had grown up watching her mom work 2 jobs after her dad passed away. Their neighborhood wasn't the richest, but it was filled with hardworking people who looked out for each other. Her mom would often say, "Baby girl, your brain is your ticket to anywhere you want to go." And Elaine took those words to heart. In high school, while other kids were hanging out at the mall, Elaine was hitting the books at the local library. The librarian, an older woman named Mrs. Chen, would save legal magazines for her. "This one's going to change the world," Mrs. Chen would tell the other staff. Elaine blushed every time she heard it, but deep down, that's exactly what she wanted to do. College wasn't easy. Elaine worked nights at a diner to help pay for her textbooks. Her roommate would come back from parties to find Elaine asleep on her law books. "Girl, you need to live a little," her roommate would say, but Elaine knew what she wanted. Law school was even harder. Being one of only 3 black women in her class of 120 students came with its own challenges. Some professors seemed surprised when she answered questions correctly, as if they hadn't expected it from her. But instead of getting angry, she got determined. She graduated at the top of her class, making her mom cry with pride at the ceremony. Her first job as a public defender showed her just how unbalanced the scales of justice could be. Young black men getting harsher sentences than white defendants for the same crimes. Poor people sitting in jail because they couldn't afford bail. Elaine fought hard for her clients, earning a reputation as someone who wouldn't back down. When the opportunity to become a judge came up, many said she was too young, too inexperienced. At just 37, she would be one of the youngest judges in the state's history. But her record spoke for itself, and the appointment went through. On her first day, she brought her mom's old Bible to the courthouse. "Remember where you came from," her mom had said that morning. As a judge, Elaine was known for being strict but fair. She didn't tolerate lawyers who came unprepared, but she also made sure everyone in her courtroom was treated with respect, from the defendants to the cleaning staff. Over the years, she developed programs to help first-time offenders get back on their feet instead of falling deeper into the system. Today's case had been particularly difficult. A young man caught with drugs who clearly needed help, not prison. Elaine had sentenced him to a rehabilitation program instead of jail time, going against the prosecutor's recommendations. "Everyone deserves a second chance," she had said in her ruling. Now, as she packed her bag to leave, she thought about the weekend ahead. Her daughter had a dance recital tomorrow, and her son had a science project she promised to help with. Her husband was probably already cooking dinner, something that made her smile. After 15 years, he still made her favorite foods when she had tough days at work. The courthouse parking lot was nearly empty as she walked to her car. The evening air felt good after being inside all day. She put her bag in the back seat of her black sedan, a practical car she'd bought after her last promotion. Nothing too flashy, that wasn't her style. As she drove out of the parking lot, Elaine turned on some soft jazz. The stress of the day began melting away as she thought about home. At the stoplight, she quickly checked her phone. A message from her husband asking if she wanted garlic bread with dinner. She smiled and typed, "Yes, please," before putting the phone down as the light turned green. Little did she know that this ordinary Friday evening was about to become the most extraordinary night of her career, and it would start with flashing lights in her rearview mirror. The blue and red lights flashed in Elaine's mirror, making her heart skip a beat. She wasn't speeding, she was sure of it. She always drove 5 miles under the limit, a habit from her cautious nature. She pulled over to the shoulder of the road, the gravel crunching under her tires. Officer James Brennan watched from his patrol car for a full minute before getting out. He'd been on the force for 15 years and had earned respect from his fellow officers. What they didn't know was how he treated certain people when the cameras weren't rolling. He adjusted his belt, checked his appearance in the mirror, and walked toward the black sedan with a strut that showed he enjoyed this part of the job. Elaine rolled down her window and placed both hands on the steering wheel, a lesson her father had taught her long ago. "Always let them see your hands," he'd said, Never give them a reason. The cool night air rushed in as she waited for the officer to approach. License and registration, Officer Brennan said, not bothering with a greeting or explanation for the stop. His flashlight beam shined directly into her eyes, making her squint. "May I ask why I'm being pulled over, officer?" Elaine asked politely, maintaining eye contact despite the blinding light. "Broken taillight," he replied, though her car had just passed inspection last week. "License and registration now." Elaine nodded. "I'm going to reach for my purse to get my license," she explained calmly, moving slowly as she'd been taught. She handed over her license and reached for the glove compartment. "Now I'm getting my registration." Officer Brennan studied her license with a frown. "Judge Washington, you expect me to believe that?" His tone shifted from professional to mocking. "Yes, I'm a county judge. I work at the courthouse downtown," Elaine replied, still keeping her voice steady despite the knot forming in her stomach. She'd seen this before, just not happening to her. "Sure you are," Brennan snorted. "And I'm the police commissioner." He walked around her car, shining his flashlight over every inch. When he reached the back, he paused. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am." "May I ask why?" "I said, step out of the vehicle." His voice hardened. "Now." Elaine took a deep breath and opened her door. The night had turned cold, or maybe it was the chill of fear running down her spine. She stood tall, her black blazer and pencil skirt a sharp contrast to the casual clothes she'd planned to change into once she got home. "Have you been drinking tonight?" Officer Brennan asked, stepping uncomfortably close to her. "No, I haven't. I've been at work all day," she replied. She could smell coffee and something sour on his breath. "I think I smell alcohol," he said, though there wasn't a drop in her system. "I'm going to need you to perform a field sobriety test." People drove by slowly, some slowing down to watch. Elaine felt her cheeks burn with humiliation. Here she was, a respected judge, being treated like a common criminal for no reason at all. "Officer, I haven't been drinking. If you check my record, you'll see I've never had a traffic violation. I'd like to call my attorney." She reached for her phone in her pocket. That's when everything changed. Officer Brennan's face flushed red. "Put your hands where I can see them," he barked, his hand moving to his holster. "I'm just getting my phone," Elaine explained, but Brennan lunged forward, knocking the phone from her hand. It clattered to the pavement as he grabbed her wrist. Resisting an officer, he growled, twisting her arm behind her back. The pain shot through her shoulder as he slammed her against the car. "You people always think you're above the law." "What are you doing?" "I'm not resisting." Elaine gasped, her cheek pressed against the cold metal of her car. A few cars had stopped now, and she could see people holding up their phones, recording the scene. "Sure, Judge," he sneered, putting emphasis on her title like it was a joke. Under his breath, but just loud enough for her to hear, he muttered words that made her blood run cold, words about her race that no officer should ever say. The handcuffs clicked tight around her wrists, digging into her skin. 15 years in the legal system, 5 as a judge, and Elaine had never felt so powerless. As Officer Brennan roughly guided her toward his patrol car, she caught sight of her phone on the ground. The screen cracked, along with her sense of security in a system she devoted her life to upholding. The back of the police car smelled like cleaning chemicals trying to hide something worse. Elaine sat with her hands cuffed behind her back, the metal digging into her wrists. Through the window, she watched people stopping to record on their phones. A woman in a red coat looked straight at her with worried eyes. Elaine hoped those videos would tell the truth her words couldn't right now. "Please, officer, this is a mistake," Elaine said, trying one more time to reason with him. "I'm Judge Elaine Washington from the county courthouse." Officer Brennan adjusted his rearview mirror to look at her. "You know how many criminals I've arrested who claim to be somebody important. Last week, a guy told me he was the mayor's cousin." He chuckled to himself as he pulled away from the curb. The drive to the police station was only 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. Elaine stared out the window, watching the familiar streets she usually drove to work. The same streets where she'd helped set up community programs, youth centers, and neighborhood watch groups. Now she was seeing them from the back of a police car. Her throat felt tight, but she wouldn't cry. Not here. Not now. At the station, Officer Brennan parked and opened her door roughly. "Let's go, Your Honor," he mocked, pulling her by the arm. The station was busy with officers and civilians, people filling out paperwork, phones ringing. A few officers glanced their way, but no one Elaine recognized. "I need to make a phone call," Elaine said as they walked through the doors. "It's my right." "You'll get your call when I say so," Brennan replied, guiding her toward the booking area. He pushed her into a chair beside a desk where a younger officer sat looking bored. "Got a DUI here, thinks she's some big-shot judge," Brennan said to the booking officer. "Claims she's Judge Washington from county." The young officer raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. He started typing into his computer. "Name?" he asked without looking up. "Elaine Washington," she answered firmly. "She hasn't been breathalyzed yet," Brennan added. "Refused the field test." "I didn't refuse anything," Elaine corrected. "You didn't give me a chance before you arrested me." Two other officers were walking by and paused at the commotion. "What's going on, Brennan?" one asked. "Just booking a DUI who's giving me attitude," he answered. "Claimed she's a judge." The officers exchanged looks and stepped closer. One leaned in to get a better look at Elaine. "I'm Judge Elaine Washington from the county courthouse," she repeated, holding her head high despite the humiliation burning in her chest. "Sure, and I'm Beyoncé," one of the female officers joked, causing the others to laugh. Elaine felt her dignity stripped away bit by bit with each joke, each disbelieving glance. The booking process continued. They took her fingerprints, pressing each finger onto an ink pad and then onto a card. The same fingerprints she used for her background check when she became a judge. They took her photo, telling her to stand against the wall. The same wall where she'd seen countless defendants photographed during her visits to the station for work. "When can I make my phone call?" Elaine asked again as they led her to a bench where three other women sat. One was crying quietly, another looked like she might be sick, and the third stared blankly at the wall. "When we're good and ready," Brennan replied with a smirk. He walked away, stopping to chat with some other officers across the room. Elaine could see them glancing her way, laughing. She caught phrases like "playing the judge card" and "thinks she's special." Hours passed. The bench emptied and filled with new people. Elaine asked 4 more times to make her phone call. Her husband would be worried by now. Her children would be asking where she was. The dance recital tomorrow, would she even make it? The thought of missing her daughter's performance made her eyes sting, but she blinked back tears. Finally, just after midnight, a different officer approached. "Phone call time," he said, not unkindly. He led her to a phone on the wall, uncuffing one of her hands so she could dial. Elaine's fingers trembled as she dialed her home number. Her husband picked up on the first ring, his voice tight with worry. "Hello." "It's me," she said, her voice cracking for the first time. "I've been arrested. I need you to call Larry." Larry was her colleague, a defense attorney she trusted completely. "Arrested? What happened?" "Are you okay?" Her husband's voice rose with each question. "I'm okay," she assured him, though she wasn't. "It's a mistake. Just call Larry and tell him I'm at the central station." The back of the police car smelled like cleaning chemicals trying to hide something worse. Elaine sat with her hands cuffed behind her back, the metal digging into her wrists. Through the window, she watched people stopping to record on their phones. A woman in a red coat looked straight at her with worried eyes. Elaine hoped those videos would tell the truth her words couldn't right now. "Please, officer, this is a mistake," Elaine said, trying one more time to reason with him. "I'm Judge Elaine Washington from the county courthouse." Officer Brennan adjusted his rearview mirror to look at her. "You know how many criminals I've arrested who claim to be somebody important? Last week a guy told me he was the mayor's cousin." He chuckled to himself as he pulled away from the curb. The drive to the police station was only 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. Elaine stayed out the window, watching the familiar streets she usually drove to work. The same streets where she helped set up community programs, youth centers, and neighborhood watch groups. Now she was seeing them from the back of a police car. Her throat felt tight, but she wouldn't cry. Not here. Not now. At the station, Officer Brennan parked and opened her door roughly. "Let's go, Your Honor," he mocked, pulling her by the arm. The station was busy with officers and civilians, people filling out paperwork, phones ringing. A few officers glanced their way, but no one Elaine recognized. "I need to make a phone call," Elaine said as they walked through the doors. "It's my right." "You'll get your call when I say so," Brennan replied, guiding her toward the booking area. He pushed her into a chair beside a desk where a younger officer sat looking bored. "Got a DUI here. Thinks she's some big-shot judge," Brennan said to the booking officer. "Claims she's Judge Washington from county." The young officer raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. He started typing into his computer. "Name?" he asked without looking up. "Elaine Washington," she answered firmly. "She hasn't been breathalyzed yet," Brennan added. "Refused the field test." "I didn't refuse anything," Elaine corrected. "You didn't give me a chance before you arrested me." Two other officers were walking by and paused at the commotion. "What's going on, Brennan?" one asked. "Just booking a DUI who's giving me attitude," he answered. "Claims she's a judge." The officers exchanged looks and stepped closer. One leaned in to get a better look at Elaine. "I'm Judge Elaine Washington from the county courthouse," she repeated, holding her head high despite the humiliation burning in her chest. "Sure, and I'm Beyoncé," one of the female officers joked, causing the others to laugh. Elaine felt her dignity stripped away bit by bit with each joke, each disbelieving glance. The booking process continued. They took her fingerprints, pressing each finger onto an ink pad and then onto a card. The same fingerprints she'd used for her background check when she became a judge. They took her photo, telling her to stand against the wall. The same wall where she'd seen countless defendants photographed during her visits to the station for work. "When can I make my phone call?" Elaine asked again as they led her to a bench where three other women sat. One was crying quietly, another looked like she might be sick, and the third stared blankly at the wall. "When we're good and ready," Brennan replied with a smirk. He walked away, stopping to chat with some other officers across the room. Elaine could see them glancing her way, laughing. She caught phrases like "playing the judge card" and "thinks she's special." Hours passed. The bench emptied and filled with new people. Elaine asked 4 more times to make her phone call. Her husband would be worried by now. Her children would be asking where she was. The dance recital tomorrow, would she even make it? The thought of missing her daughter's performance made her eyes sting, but she blinked back tears. Finally, just after midnight, a different officer approached. "Phone call time," he said, not unkindly. He led her to a phone on the wall, uncuffing one of her hands so she could dial. Elaine's fingers trembled as she dialed her home number. Her husband picked up on the first ring, his voice tight with worry. "Hello." "It's me," she said, her voice cracking for the first time. "I've been arrested. I need you to call Larry." Larry was her colleague, a defense attorney she trusted completely. "Arrested? What happened?" "Are you okay?" Her husband's voice rose with each question. "I'm okay," she assured him, though she wasn't. "It's a mistake. Just call Larry and tell him I'm at the central station." The officer tapped his watch, signaling her time was almost up. "I have to go. Tell the kids I love them. I'll explain everything later." She hung up before her emotions could get the better of her. As the officer led her back to the bench, she noticed something had changed. There was a flurry of activity near the front desk. A tall man in a suit had arrived and was speaking urgently to the desk sergeant. More officers were gathering, their expressions shifting from amused to concerned. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but something was happening. The atmosphere in the station was changing, like the air pressure before a storm. One officer was frantically pulling up something on a computer while others huddled around to look. Officer Brennan, who had been lounging at a desk filling out paperwork, suddenly stood up straight, his face losing its smug expression as the desk sergeant called his name and beckoned him over with a stern look. Elaine watched, waiting. Something was shifting. The truth was coming to light. The man in the suit was Larry Thompson, one of the best defense attorneys in the city and Elaine's former colleague. His normally cheerful face was serious as he spoke with the desk sergeant, his hands moving quickly as he explained something. Even from across the room, Elaine could see the sergeant's eyes widen with each word Larry said. The sergeant immediately picked up a phone, his fingers punching in numbers urgently. Within minutes, a door at the far end of the room opened and a heavy-set man with salt and pepper hair walked out. Captain Reynolds, the head of the precinct. Elaine recognized him from community meetings she'd attended as a judge. Officer Brennan was called over to join the conversation. His back was to Elaine, but she could see the stiffness in his shoulders as the captain spoke to him. Brennan's head shook once, twice, as if denying something. Then the captain pointed at a computer screen and Brennan leaned in to look. His whole body seemed to deflate as he straightened up again. The captain looked across the room, his eyes finding Elaine on the bench. Recognition flashed across his face, followed by something that looked like genuine horror. He said something to the officers around him, and suddenly everyone was moving. The young officer who had processed her booking approached, keys jingling in his hand. "Judge Washington," he said, the title no longer mocked but spoken with nervous respect. "If you'll come with me, please." As she stood, she saw Officer Brennan watching, his face now pale. The smugness was gone, replaced by something that looked like fear. The captain was on the phone again, pacing back and forth, occasionally glancing her way with a worried expression. The young officer led her to a small conference room, not a cell. Inside, Larry stood waiting, his briefcase on the table. When the door closed behind them, he rushed over and gave her a brief hug. "Elaine, I'm so sorry this happened. Your husband called me right away." Larry's voice was tight with controlled anger. "You okay?" "I've been better," she admitted, finally letting some of her composure slip now that she was with a friend. "What's happening out there?" "Your arrest is what's happening," Larry said, opening his briefcase and pulling out a tablet. "Someone recorded the whole thing and posted it online an hour ago. It's already got thousands of views. The captain just watched it, and let's just say Officer Brennan has some explaining to do." He turned the tablet toward her, and Elaine watched herself being pushed against her car, heard Brennan's words clearly through the phone's microphone, saw herself being handcuffed and led away. The footage was steady and clear. Whoever had recorded it had done so deliberately, capturing the entire incident. "There's more," Larry continued, swiping to show another video. This one was from someone across the street, capturing a different angle. Then a third video, this one showing her car with its perfectly functioning taillights after Brennan had claimed one was out. "The internet is doing its thing. People recognized you. The courthouse has been called. The chief of police has been called. The mayor has been called." The door opened and Captain Reynolds entered, followed by a woman in a sharp business suit, the department's legal counsel, Elaine guessed. The captain's face was grave as he pulled out a chair across from her. "Judge Washington," he began, his voice careful, "on behalf of the entire department, I want to extend our deepest apologies for what's happened tonight." The words sounded rehearsed, as if he'd been practicing them on the way to the room. "There has clearly been a serious mistake." "A mistake?" Larry repeated, his voice dangerously calm. "Captain, we both know what we saw in those videos was no mistake. It was racial profiling, harassment, excessive force, and false arrest." The captain flinched slightly but didn't argue. "We're conducting a full investigation. Officer Brennan has been placed on immediate administrative leave pending." "Am I free to go?" Elaine interrupted. She didn't want apologies or explanations right now. She wanted to go home to her family. "Of course," the captain said quickly. "Your belongings are being collected now. We can offer you a ride home, or if you prefer, we can have your car brought from the impound lot immediately." "I'll drive her," Larry said firmly. The legal counsel, who had been silent until now, leaned forward. "Judge Washington, we understand this has been a difficult experience. The department is committed to addressing this situation with complete transparency. If there's anything we can do—" "What you can do," Elaine said, finding her voice as a judge again, "is ensure that Officer Brennan is properly investigated. Not just for tonight, but for his entire record. I doubt I'm the first person he's treated this way, just the first with enough influence to make people listen." She stood up, straightening her wrinkled blazer. "And I want the dashcam footage and all station security video preserved. All of it." The captain nodded. "Already done, Your Honor." A knock at the door, and an officer entered with Elaine's purse, phone, and other belongings. Her phone screen was still cracked from when Brennan had knocked it to the ground. As Elaine signed for her things, she noticed the station had gone quiet. Officers stood in small groups, watching her through the conference room windows. Some looked embarrassed, others concerned, a few defiant. She wondered how many had witnessed similar situations before and said nothing. Larry put a hand on her shoulder. "Ready to go?" She nodded, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had kept her going for hours was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness. But as they walked through the station toward the exit, Elaine kept her head high, her steps measured. She wasn't just Elaine Washington tonight, she was Judge Washington, and every eye that followed her would remember what they saw. Outside, the night air felt like freedom. But as Larry led her to his car, Elaine knew this wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. Elaine woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing nonstop. It was just past 7 a.m., but her phone screen showed 27 missed calls, dozens of text messages, and more notifications than she could count. She reached over to silence it, wincing as her shoulder ached from being roughly handled the night before. Her husband David brought her a cup of coffee and sat on the edge of the bed. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his eyes still worried. He hadn't slept much either. She'd heard him pacing most of the night. "Like I've been hit by a truck," she admitted, taking a sip. The hot coffee felt good against her dry throat. "What's happening with my phone?" David's expression was hard to read. "The videos, Elaine. They're everywhere." He handed her his tablet, already open to a news website. The headline made her stomach drop. "Judge wrongfully arrested. Dashcam and bystander videos show officer's racial bias." Below it was a still image from the dashcam, showing her face pressed against her car as Officer Brennan handcuffed her. "How bad is it?" she asked, scrolling through the article. "It's big," David replied. "All the local stations have it. The national networks picked it up an hour ago. Your phone's probably blowing up with reporters trying to get a statement." Elaine set the tablet down, trying to process this information. She'd expected some fallout, but not this quickly, not this intensely. "The kids?" "They're still asleep. I called the school already. Thought maybe they should stay home today, just until we figure out how to talk to them about this." She nodded, grateful for his foresight. Their children were 9 and 12, old enough to understand, but young enough to be scared by seeing their mother in handcuffs on the news. The doorbell rang, making them both jump. David looked out the bedroom window. "News van," he said grimly. "First of many, I'm guessing." Elaine's phone buzzed again. This time it was Larry. "The chief of police wants to meet," he said when she answered. "The mayor too. They're in damage control mode." "I need time," Elaine replied, thinking of her children sleeping down the hall. "At least until this afternoon." "I'll tell them," Larry agreed. "But Elaine, there's something else. People are digging into Brennan's record now. 3 complaints of excessive force in the last 2 years, all filed by black citizens, all dismissed without investigation. And someone leaked his text messages from last night. It's ugly. He was bragging to another officer about arresting you before he knew who you really were." A wave of anger washed over her. Not just for herself, but for the others who hadn't been believed, who didn't have videos going viral or reporters at their door. "Keep me posted," she told Larry, ending the call. By noon, the quiet street was lined with news vans. Elaine's colleagues from the courthouse had been calling all morning. The Chief Justice of the State Supreme Court had personally called to offer support. Civil rights organizations were asking for interviews. Social media was exploding with hashtags about her case. David brought lunch to their bedroom, where Elaine was finally getting dressed. "You don't have to do this today," he reminded her. "Nobody would blame you for taking time." She shook her head as she buttoned her blazer. "If I hide, it looks like I did something wrong." "I didn't." She checked her appearance in the mirror. Despite the sleepless night, she looked every bit the judge she was. "Besides, this isn't just about me anymore." At 2 p.m., Elaine and David sat down with their children. Their daughter climbed into Elaine's lap, while their son sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes serious as they explained what had happened in simple terms. "But why would he arrest you if you didn't do anything wrong?" their son asked, confusion clear on his face. Elaine took a deep breath. "Sometimes people make judgments about others based on how they look, not who they really are. That's wrong, but it happens. What matters is that the truth came out." "Are you in trouble?" their daughter asked in a small voice. "No, sweetheart. I'm not in trouble. The police officer is because he didn't do his job the right way." By 4 p.m., Elaine was sitting in the mayor's office with Larry beside her. The police chief, the city attorney, and the mayor all looked like they hadn't slept either. "Judge Washington," the mayor began, "I can't express how deeply sorry we are about what happened to you." "I appreciate that," Elaine replied calmly, "but I'm not here for apologies. I'm here to discuss what happens next." The police chief cleared his throat. "Officer Brennan has been suspended without pay pending a full investigation. Given the evidence that's come to light, I expect that suspension to become permanent very soon." "That's a start," Larry said, "but we're also looking at a pattern of behavior that was ignored for years. 3 previous complaints, all dismissed without proper investigation." The city attorney shifted uncomfortably. "We're reopening those cases immediately." "And the other officers at the station?" Elaine asked. "The ones who laughed along, who denied me my rights, who treated me like a criminal even after I identified myself." The room fell silent. Finally, the police chief spoke. "That's more complicated. But I assure you, we're looking at everyone involved." Elaine leaned forward. "It shouldn't be complicated to expect officers to treat all citizens with dignity and respect. What happened to me was terrible, but I'm sitting here in the mayor's office getting apologies because of who I am. What about the people who don't have my title, my connections, my platform? Who speaks for them?" As she left the meeting an hour later, a small crowd had gathered outside City Hall. Some held signs supporting her. Reporters called out questions as she walked to her car. For a moment she paused, considering whether to speak. "Judge Washington, will you be filing a lawsuit? Are you calling for Officer Brennan to be fired? Do you believe this incident represents systemic problems in the police department?" Elaine looked at the cameras, at the people watching, at the city where she had built her career upholding justice. This was her moment, not just to seek accountability for herself, but to use her voice for something bigger. She stepped toward the microphones, ready to speak. 2 weeks passed like a whirlwind. Elaine's face was on every news channel, her story discussed on talk shows and podcasts across the country. People stopped her in the grocery store to shake her hand. Letters poured in from strangers sharing similar experiences with police. Her kids were back in school, but teachers had called to say some classmates were asking uncomfortable questions. Through it all, Elaine tried to maintain normalcy at home while dealing with the growing spotlight on her case. She'd hired a publicist to handle the flood of interview requests and returned to her duties at the courthouse, though some of her cases had been reassigned temporarily to avoid any appearance of bias related to police matters. Today was different, though. Today was Officer Brennan's disciplinary hearing. Elaine stood in front of her closet, considering what to wear. This wasn't a normal workday. She wasn't presiding over this hearing. She had recused herself for obvious reasons, but she would be there to testify. Her testimony would be crucial. She chose a navy blue suit, professional, serious but not intimidating. As she fastened her pearl earrings, David appeared in the doorway. "You sure you're ready for this?" he asked, straightening his own tie. He had taken the day off work to support her. "Ready as I'll ever be," she replied, meeting his eyes in the mirror. "It feels strange to be on the other side of the courtroom." The courthouse was packed when they arrived. News vans lined the street, and reporters called out questions as Elaine and David walked up the steps. Inside, the hallways were buzzing with whispers that fell silent as she passed. Colleagues nodded respectfully, some reaching out to touch her arm in support. Larry met them outside the hearing room. "It's a full house in there," he warned. The police union showed up in force. Some community organizations too. The chief judge cleared her calendar to handle this personally. Elaine nodded. Chief Judge Patricia Howard was a no-nonsense veteran of the bench known for her fairness and sharp mind. If anyone could navigate this politically charged hearing, it was her. Inside, the hearing room was indeed packed. One side filled mostly with officers in uniform, sitting straight-backed and serious. The other side held a mix of community members, civil rights advocates, and curious courthouse staff. In the front row sat Captain Reynolds and several high-ranking police officials, their expressions carefully neutral. Officer Brennan sat at a table with his attorney and a police union representative. He looked different than Elaine remembered, smaller somehow, in his dress uniform with his hair neatly combed. He didn't look at her when she entered, keeping his eyes fixed on the table in front of him. The hearing began with formalities, the reading of charges and opening statements. Brennan's attorney argued that his client had followed protocol during a routine traffic stop that escalated due to miscommunication and unfortunate circumstances. He carefully avoided mentioning race or the slurs Brennan had been caught using on camera. Then it was time for evidence. The room fell completely silent as the videos played, first the dashcam footage, then the bystander videos, then the security footage from the police station. Seeing it all together like this, played on a large screen in the formal setting of a courtroom, made the events of that night even more shocking. Elaine heard gasps from the audience, saw some officers shifting uncomfortably in their seats. When the videos ended, Judge Howard called Elaine to testify. Taking a deep breath, she walked to the witness stand, was sworn in, and took a seat. From here, she could see the entire room. David in the back, his face encouraging. Larry at the prosecution table, ready with his questions, and directly across from her, Officer Brennan, finally meeting her eyes. His expression was hard to read. Was it regret? Defiance? Fear? All she knew for sure was that he was seeing her differently now, not as a random black woman in a car, but as Judge Elaine Washington, respected jurist and community leader whose wrongful arrest had brought both of them to this moment. Larry approached the stand. Judge Washington, please tell us what happened on the evening of April 15th. Elaine leaned toward the microphone. Her voice came out steady and clear as she recounted every detail. The initial stop, Brennan's changing demeanor when she identified herself as a judge, the escalation, the humiliation at the station. She didn't embellish or exaggerate. She didn't need to. The truth was damning enough. 6 months had passed since that fateful night when Elaine was wrongfully arrested. The seasons had changed, leaves turning golden and falling from the trees, but the changes in the city went far deeper than nature's rhythm. Tonight, Elaine stood at a podium in the community center, looking out at a room packed with familiar and unfamiliar faces. Police officers in uniform sat alongside community activists who had once protested against them. City officials mingled with ordinary citizens who had come to witness something that many had thought impossible just months ago. Thank you all for coming, Elaine began, her voice steady and warm. The microphone carried her words to every corner of the room. 6 months ago, I stood in front of City Hall as a victim seeking justice. Tonight, I stand before you as a partner in creating change. The audience applauded, and Elaine glanced toward the front row, where David sat with their children, their proud faces giving her strength. Beside them was Larry, whose legal expertise had been invaluable throughout this journey. When Officer Brennan pulled me over that night, he didn't see Judge Elaine Washington. He saw only the color of my skin and made judgments based on prejudice, not facts. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. But what happened next showed the power of truth and accountability. The investigation into Brennan had revealed much more than his treatment of Elaine. His personnel file contained numerous complaints that had been buried or dismissed. Text messages showed a pattern of racist comments. And perhaps most damning, 3 other citizens came forward with stories nearly identical to Elaine's: wrongful stops, abusive treatment, and false charges. The only difference was that their stories hadn't gone viral. Officer Brennan was terminated from the police force, Elaine continued. He now faces criminal charges for civil rights violations. But firing one officer doesn't solve the deeper problems that allowed his behavior to continue unchecked for years. She gestured to a table at the side of the stage, where a document lay waiting for signatures. That's why I'm proud to announce that today, our city is implementing the most comprehensive police reform initiative in our state's history. More applause filled the room. This was the culmination of months of work, contentious meetings, heated debates, and finally, hard-won consensus. Every officer will now wear body cameras that cannot be turned off during interactions with the public, Elaine explained. An independent civilian review board will investigate all complaints of misconduct. De-escalation training is now mandatory, and performance reviews will prioritize community engagement over arrest numbers. In the back of the room stood Captain Reynolds, now promoted to deputy chief. His face showed a mixture of emotions: pride in the positive changes, perhaps regret for not pushing harder for them sooner. After Elaine's case, he had become an unexpected ally, acknowledging the problems within his department and working to address them. None of this would have happened without every person in this room, Elaine continued. The community members who demanded better. the honest officers who spoke up about problems they'd witnessed, the city officials who chose courage over comfort. What she didn't mention was the personal cost of the past 6 months, the hate mail she'd received, the death threats that had required additional security at their home, the nights she'd lain awake wondering if she was pushing too hard or not hard enough. "But our work isn't finished," she said, her voice growing more passionate. "True justice isn't just about punishing wrongdoing, it's about building systems that prevent harm in the first place." She revealed her newest initiative, the Equal Justice Foundation, created with the settlement money from her lawsuit against the city. The foundation would provide legal representation to people who couldn't afford it, focusing on cases of police misconduct and civil rights violations. "Every person deserves to be treated with dignity and respect by those sworn to protect and serve them," Elaine said. "Every person deserves equal justice under the law, not just those with titles or influence or viral videos." As she spoke these words, she thought of the other victims who had come forward after her case made headlines. People who had been disbelieved, dismissed, and denied justice until her position as a judge had forced the system to pay attention. "The most powerful form of karma isn't revenge," Elaine said, her voice softening. "It's transformation, taking something painful and using it to create positive change." She looked around the room, at faces black and white and every shade between, at uniforms and suits and casual clothes, at the young and old who had come together in this space. "6 months ago, Officer Brennan pulled me over because he saw only my skin color. Today, we're showing that our community sees each other's full humanity. We're building a justice system worthy of its name." As she stepped away from the podium to thunderous applause, Elaine felt a sense of closure mixed with new beginning. The night of her arrest had been the most humiliating experience of her life, but it had sparked changes that would help countless others. Outside the community center, the stars shone brightly overhead. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles for equity and justice. But tonight, as Elaine walked hand in hand with her family toward home, she felt something that had been missing since that night 6 months ago: hope. Not just for herself, but for her children and their future in a community that was finally, painfully, honestly confronting its deepest flaws and working to heal them.